This is Tim, and this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo. This week, a talk with cartoonist Joey Alison Sayers. She's done work for Mad Magazine, the San Francisco Bay Guardian, the Nib, GoComics, and more, plus a couple of books about her coming out as transgender. Why did she disappear for a few years? Why did she come back to comics? Plus the best advice she knows for new creators and more. First, a reminder that you can help this podcast by making your Amazon purchases via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon and make that your bookmark for future purchases. We'll then get a percentage of what you spend. It costs you nothing extra and helps us cover web hosting and the other costs of presenting this show every week. Okay, I'm talking with Joey Alison Sayers in Oakland. How are you doing?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Okay. So you've actually been on kind of my list of people that I wanted to interview for quite a while, way back when you were doing The Machine That Travels Through Time in Mad Magazine. I was thinking, I should talk to this person. And then, but somehow I never got to it. And then recently, John Robertson passed on to me that you'd been on a podcast and you enjoyed it so much you wanted to do all of them.
All of the podcasts, yeah.
No matter what the topic, just any podcast.
I don't even care. No, I'll make it up if I'm not qualified.
So I said, oh, okay. Yeah. I've been wanting to talk to her. So
perfect.
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mentioned you'd been in Mad. I noticed you're not doing that anymore.
No, not so much.
Yeah, how come?
And I took a little break from that. Honestly, I took a little break from comics for about 3 years. Oh. And then when I came back to it, I just had some different goals and priorities. And, I wouldn't be against doing strips for them again. I just haven't felt inspired. I really liked working for them. They're great.
Yeah, it must be fun to be involved with that.
Yeah, it's a good crew. It's a wacky bunch of people. So
regular bunch of idiots. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so now you're living in Oakland. Did you grow up there?
Yeah. No. I mostly grew up in Colorado.
Okay.
But I've lived here for about 20 years, so it's kind of my home.
And what comics were you reading as a kid?
Oh gosh, mostly newspaper comics. That's really where I got into comics was the strips. Garfield and Far Side and Calvin and Hobbes and pretty much everything. I'd read them all, even if they didn't make sense. I'd read all the serial comics, even though I had no idea what they were about.
Steve Canyon. Yeah.
Yeah. Mark Trail, all that jazz. And then some like comic booky kind of things. What were it was like Casper and all of those ones. I can't remember what the overall publisher was.
Harvey.
Harvey, yeah, totally. So I read a lot of those kinds of things. And then as I got older, I read some more like superhero-y kind of things. But I always liked Gru the Wanderer. That was my favorite comic.
Yeah. Were you making comics as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, nothing too serious, obviously. But yeah, I would draw strips and I would... I was really into the idea of doing a newspaper comic. I thought that would just be the best thing. So I would try different things and do little one-panel gag strips or multi-panel things, and I'd come up with different characters. Nothing ever really stuck, but I would do it for a little while, and it was fun. Yeah, and I mean, I found out much later that doing a daily strip would be a total grind. I mean, doing a weekly strip is challenging enough as it is. I can't.
Oh yes.
Really imagine it doing 7 strips
every single day.
Yeah.
Like Charles Schultz for 50 years. How did he do it? He didn't even take a day off.
Yeah, no, it's intense.
Yeah. So, like, at what point did you say, okay, I'm going to try to really seriously do comics and make some income at it?
Well, it was a while. I didn't really I didn't really come at it with that attitude right away. I mean, so I drew a lot of comics when I was a kid, and then when I got to be in my 20s, I kind of stopped doing almost all creative things. I was playing a little bit of music and doing like sculpting and getting into all these other different media, but nothing really seriously, and just everything was really casual. And then, yeah, and then at some point, I guess it was around 2000 or so, I just kind of got into drawing again. I would go and hang out at bars by myself and just have a beer and draw little pictures on the backs of menus or whatever. And I had this. I was like, oh, I could take all these drawings and photocopy them and put them into like a little like book kind of thing and give it to people or sell it. I had this really basically
actually get money for it.
Yeah. So, but like I was so out of the loop that I was like, this is a novel idea. You know, like I mean, I kind of sort of knew that zines existed, but I didn't realize people were doing mini comics and like basically. I was reinventing the wheel. I was like, this is great. I'm going to be a millionaire.
It's a comic book.
Yeah, exactly. So I made a bunch of I made a handful of copies of a couple different ones, and I brought them to Comic Relief, which used to be like the big comic store in Berkeley. And I brought it in, and they were like, yeah, check it out. There's like this whole section of the store devoted to these things. And it was great because I ended up meeting other cartoonists that very day that I'm still friends with, and to kind of discover the whole community. And then it just kind of took off from there. I still didn't have big designs on like doing it for income or like as a at least a semi-career. But the more I did it, the more I was like, oh, this is fun. And every once in a while someone wants to pay me to do something, and maybe I should pursue that a little bit. And so then it's been kind of going from there.
So what was the first comic you did that, like, as kind of a freelance or whatever, that somebody paid you for?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that I could remember exactly. I mean, at the time, there was a bunch of people doing, putting out anthologies of like alternative comics, and I don't know how much that still happens, but, and that was, probably in like the 2004, 2005 era. Yeah. And
I saw on your site you started Mad in 2006.
Yeah. So a little bit before that, there were just people putting out these little anthologies, not little, they were like published anthologies, and they would pay like $25 a page or something like that. I think it was likely one of those that was my first like paid, like real paid gig. But I was also around that time starting to shop around Thing Part, which was my first strip. And that had mixed results. I mean, it was great. I did it weekly for about 3 or 4 years. And it was in various alternative news weeklies around the country and a couple in Europe from time to time. So that was, I was getting into doing an alternative weekly strip like right around the time that all the newspapers were going out of business. So that was
great
really
timing.
I know, it was really, really terrible timing. I was like, why can't I get any more clients?
Because they're going out of business.
Yeah. They were dropping comics from their papers faster than I could even like submit to them.
Yeah,
so.
Cutting the sandbags.
Exactly. Oh,
trying not to crash.
Yeah. I know. I was like, no, this is you can't do this to me. But
so now, has comics been your day job at any point?
Not fully, no. I mean, it has at times contributed, a fair amount to my overall income, but never full time. No, I've always done different things. I was a landscape gardener for a long time. That was kind of fun. That gave me a lot of time to draw. Honestly, that's what kind of helped me find the time to get back into doing so much work. Because I would just, I was working as a gardener 4 days a week, and then I'd have these long weekends and come home and just draw after work. And but yeah, no, now I work in a library. Everything's different now.
Yeah, I see.
Kids and all that stuff. So it's a very different scenario.
Right. Yeah. So on your site. So I read Just So You Know books 1 and 2. And so why did you decide to do books about your coming out as, well, I'm going to use the wrong term here. Trans.
No, it's trans. You say trans.
Say trans. Okay, kind of covers all the ground.
Yeah.
Anyway, why did you decide to do comics about that?
Wow. Well, it was a big event in my life.
Sure.
Maybe the biggest. And I guess, there were a lot of reasons. I mean, I needed to kind of process it. I needed to sort of work through what all had happened. I mean, I wasn't chronicling it at the time that I was of my transition. I drew it afterwards, a couple of years into my transition. And so I thought it would help me kind of like sort of process it, I guess is the word I already said, so I'll say it again. But then I also thought it would be kind of a fun way to kind of tell people about just the experience, my experience, but just also about just, the trans experience as told through the lens of one person. And at the time, it was still, trans issues were still very nascent. And now there's like tons of, everyone talks about it, various trans things, and it's in the news all the time. And like famous people are transitioning and blah, blah, blah. But at the time, it was a lot more low key, and people didn't really know what to make of it, especially when I would like come out to people and they'd just kind of be like, I don't even know what that is. So that was the other thing. I was like, I can make this comic and then and give it to people as a way of kind of coming out or explaining what the deal is. And it was actually really effective for that. I gave it to, family members and friends and just all kinds of people to just be like, here, read this, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, I appreciated the glossary in the back of the first book, because I hadn't even been sure that there was a difference between transgender and transsexual, but okay.
Well, and even that is like shifted in the intervening, several years.
When did this book come out? First, this is 2009. Okay.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, that's ancient history in terms of trans issues.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I know.
Okay. Let's see. But yeah, just kind of reading those, I appreciated how kind of grounded they felt, and it kind of reminded me that this, just like any other thing in life, it could be something that anyone faced, just depending on what you're born with. Yeah,
I think I didn't set out to sort of tell everybody what it was like for everybody, who experienced this, or, who's trans or transitions, or I just wanted to tell my story. I just wanted it to be really personal and really specific, because I would never want to speak for, a whole group of people at large.
Trans people, yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be really, really presumptuous. But so I just wanted it to be kind of real, and I wanted it to be just about my everyday life, and not so much these huge crises, so much as just like, oh, this is this, cruddy thing that happened at the grocery store, or this was this hard conversation I had with my mom or whatever. And and I also wanted to make it funny, and that was the other thing. I was like, I didn't want to make something serious and sad.
Yeah, I mean, there are painful points in it, but
for sure,
there's plenty of comedy in there too.
Yeah, I wanted, I wanted that to be the predominant feel of the book, because there is that side to it, and there was a lot of sadness, and there was a lot of pain, and it was a challenging thing on so many levels, but I felt like there was also a lot of awesome things, and there was a lot of joy, and I found happiness that I just didn't know prior to that point in my life. So I wanted that to kind of come through as well.
Yeah, well, you show people saying to you that you seem so much kind of happier and more comfortable than you had before.
Yeah, I was pretty miserable prior to that.
Yeah,
I mean, relatively speaking. But yeah, no, life is good now.
Good.
And so that was like 10 years ago. So I, I've had a lot of time to just kind of be and live. And now I've started a family with my wife, and I found a better job than landscape gardening. And then I've refound comics a few years ago. So or a couple years ago now at this point. So, so I'm pretty stoked.
Mm-hmm. Coming up, reaching new audiences, advice for new creators, and more. But first, help Deconstructing Comics, Critiquing Comics, and To the Bat Poles move up to bigger and better things. Pledge a few bucks a month via Patreon at patreon.com/deconcomics. Or you can make a one-time donation via PayPal. Send it to donate@deconstructingcomics.com.
I'm Batman.
And I'm Robin.
This is Tim.
And this is Paul.
To the Bat Poles! The iTunes reviews are in on To the Bat Poles podcast. These guys do a good job, writes Acello. Who knew that the Batman TV show was such a wellspring of insight into Hollywood trivia, 60s counterculture, sexual mores, and even musical analysis? The Young brothers know their stuff, says Professor Allen. It is a great mix of nostalgia, analysis, and fun. Highly recommended. You've heard the reviews, now try it for yourself. New episodes on the first, third, and fifth Thursdays of the month on iTunes or Stitcher, or at tothebatpoles.libsyn.com.
Batman, the answer to a policeman's prayer.
For nostalgia, analysis, and fun, it's
To the Bat Poles.
Who's had the biggest influence on you in terms of your comics? Can you think of any particular person who's influenced you?
Wow. I mean, I would say a lot. That's tough. Can I give a few?
Okay, sure.
I don't know. I really, I'll say, well, for one, I would say Reuben Bowling, Tom the Dancing Bug, was one of those alternative weekly strips that made me kind of rediscover the idea of doing a strip. That, and I would say Linda Barry, just made me realize that there was a lot more possibility in the form. Because having read newspaper strips for so much of my life, I kind of had this vision of them being these like rectangular boxes that, that never really like pushed the envelope too hard and had like these like specific sort of like, what do you call them, like stereotypical character sets and those and some others. Mm-hmm. When I rediscovered the alternative news weeklies and the comics in those, I was just like, wow, this is something that could be really fun and really creative and really cool. And in the case of Linda Barry, it can be really beautiful and poetic.
Yeah, well, Tom the Dancing Bug, I mean, he does all kinds of different things within that same shape.
Yeah.
Same rectangle. Sometimes it's, his super fun pack comics, and sometimes it's just like one big sort of like a magazine ad or something, or he'll do anything.
Yeah, he really pushes the boundaries of what you can do with a strip like that. It's pretty awesome.
Yes. And he's been on my show before.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Oh, cool.
It's been quite a few years ago now, but so what do you do to recharge your creative batteries? Well, you said you were off from comics for a while.
Yeah, well, after my daughter was born, I just wanted to focus on family stuff and just, be a really present mom and I don't know, I felt doing comics or things like that just felt like I was taking time away from my family. And so I just put that down for a little while. But when my second child was born, about almost 2 years ago, that's when I started to realize actually that I needed to have a creative outlet to be a better parent.
Interesting.
And so they really recharged me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I was spending time with them. I mean, they're just amazing and just playing and kind of being almost like childlike again in a way, like just seeing the world through their eyes has really just kind of made me just feel creative again. I just feel like there's more possibilities in the world for art and humor and things like that. So, yeah, they're a big part of it.
Mm-hmm,
that
I see.
And Twitter. I like Twitter a lot. I find it very inspirational.
So doing the comics sort of recharges you for being with your family and vice versa?
Yeah, they really feed off each other. And it's pretty much all I do. I mean, I work and then I come home from work and I play with the kids and then I put the kids down to bed and then I draw comics and then I go to bed. So it's like everything just kind of has to feed off each other. There's no other time to do anything else.
So what tools do you generally use to make comics?
Well, I draw all the strips. I draw in pencil, and then I go over them with ink, and then after that I go digital and I scan everything in and clean it up in Photoshop and add color and any sort of, well, I don't do too much more fancy than that. Pretty much the only, I used to do everything analog, and I used to color with colored pencils or occasionally like paint or different things like that, and that was just tedious. So, but I've always liked, I don't know, I really like pencils and I really like pens, and I like the feeling that those give. And I've tried drawing digitally, and it's never quite as satisfying to me. But yeah, so I keep it pretty simple. But that's kind of my art style anyways. It's not too complicated. I'm not doing 20 layers of colors and shading and masks and all that jazz.
Photoshop coloring.
It's pretty straightforward.
I see. Now, have you been doing many conventions?
Not for a while. No, I used to do a ton. Back in chapter 1, before kids. I used to do 5 or 6 a year. And it was a blast. I love the conventions. I miss it a lot, but it's just, it's too hard to be away from family. And honestly, most of them, at least for me, ended up being a financial, at best, they were like a break even kind of situation. And the local conventions, sometimes I'd, make a little bit of money, but not enough to justify, taking a weekend off of work and all that stuff. But I miss the conventions. They're really fun.
Yeah, I've done a couple of conventions here with my semi-comics-ish work at a comics convention, and it's kind of break-even, too. I mean, I think it's just kind of to feel like you're doing something and to kind of, meet people and be visible.
Yeah, I think they're great for community building. I love that part of it, and just meeting all, people whose work you've read online, or just spending time with people you already know and like, and talking about comics and remembering what you love about comics, and maybe even doing some creative work when you're there. I mean, I think it's great for that. I love that side of it. In fact, I would do that without the sales part of it almost. If there was like a comics summer camp or something like that, I think that'd be a lot of fun. It'd be really inspirational. But yeah, again, it's hard to get away and from work and family and all that, especially with 2 little ones.
Yeah. So now, what have you been doing lately? You got stuff on the Nib website. Yeah. Are you put out any new books or?
No, not at the moment. I'm just kind of just doing work digitally right now, putting stuff online. So I'm doing stuff on the Nib, like about every other week. I've got a strip up there. Usually, kind of political, socio-political commentary. And that's been a lot of fun and a big shift for me, because I haven't really done a whole lot of that. And then I recently got hooked up with GoComics. That's kind of the latest thing. And I do a weekly strip for them.
Yeah, I just noticed that today, and I've been using GoComics, so I subscribe to your strip.
Oh, cool. Well, thanks. Yeah.
And now you get like another penny a month or something, probably.
Yeah. I don't even know how that all works out. It's no, it's great though. It's a whole new audience, hopefully. And so I'm doing I put in a brand new comic up once a week, and then twice a week I put up something from the vault, and so that's been really fun. But primarily those 2 things, and then I put stuff up on Twitter just for fun, and but not really doing anything else that's too goal oriented at this point.
What's the best advice you've ever heard given to a promising new creator? You think of anything?
Yeah, I think the best advice that I've heard people say, and I've actually given myself, is just to just draw. People, I talk to people, and I've heard people talk. Let me start over. I've heard people who are just kind of starting out say oh, I really want to, do this book, or I want to do this have this big career goal, but they're not putting in the time. And it's all about drawing. You just have to draw and draw and draw and work and work and work. And it's a lot of work. if you want to do anything with it, if you want to get better, if you want to create something that's really great. But if that's not your goal, you can just goof around. But it's just, you just got to draw. You just got to do it and do it and do it and submit things and submit and submit. It's just, you just got to keep going. Just got to keep pushing and trying. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, it can be demoralizing when you submit a few times and nothing happens, but
yeah, but that's, everyone's been rejected, even the greats, I'm sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah. The Beatles were rejected.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, no, rejection sucks, and submitting something to somebody or showing something to somebody and having them say like they don't like it, that sucks. It really sucks. I can think of lots of times when I like approached somebody with an idea or a comic or a fully fleshed out comic and said like, hey, I think you really like this, and they're like, I really don't. It's really painful. But you got to just keep going. I mean, there's 7 billion people in the world. Just because one person doesn't like, something you do, or even if 6 billion people don't like what you do, or 6.999 billion people. I mean, you got to do it for yourself. You got to, if you like what you're doing, then that's the most important thing. Just got to keep going.
What kind of comic would you like to do that you haven't done yet?
I think, I would like to do a longer form story, like a proper graphic novel. I don't know that I'll ever do one, but I think that would be really fun. I've written a couple, just I haven't done them. There's a couple that I've done 100-page stories and then decided that it wasn't what I wanted to do and put it away. But I'd love to find an idea for a longer story that I was really believed in and really wanted to see out in the world. That would be cool.
Now, would that be something personal again, or would it's kind of completely fiction? Or
no, I think I'd like to do something fictional. Yeah, I mean, the personal stuff is fun, but it's not really where I want to go with my comics at large. It's a fun side project. It's hard putting yourself out there. Like when you it's really being honest and making a comic about yourself is it puts you in a very vulnerable place, suddenly people know all this stuff about you that you obviously willingly put out there. But I think, at least for me, I forgot that people would read it and then know me.
Know all that stuff about you. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that side of it. It's kind of odd.
I see. Is there a genre that you like to read but you can't picture yourself working on?
Oh. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I like reading some science fiction-y comics. I've enjoyed Trees. So I'm trying to remember who that is.
Trees. I've heard of this, but I'm blanking on creator.
I'm not really good at names. It's a really fantastic science fiction-y kind of series. I can't imagine doing anything like that. It's far too involved in more world building than I think I'd really enjoy doing myself. But I really like reading stuff like that. I think it's fantastic.
Oh, it was Warren Ellis and Jason Howard.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
From Image.
So yeah, I like stuff like that, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else in that sort of genre that I've enjoyed lately. No, I haven't been reading a ton of comics lately. That's a shame, honestly.
Have you read anything, or what have you been reading?
Geez, not much. Honestly, not much.
Well, kids running around.
Yeah. I just don't have time to read. I wish I did.
Yeah, I've been running behind myself. I buy stuff on Comixology and then it sits for 2 months. Because I'm doing podcasts and also doing things that actually make money. So
I know. If we all just didn't have to make money, then we could just spend all our time creating and reading and be glorious.
Well, what kind of comics are you drawn to? I mean, what is it, more science fiction or superhero or personal stuff, or what interests you?
Not so much superhero stuff. I would say I really have enjoyed Lumberjanes. So I like sort of character driven stuff like that, and humor. I like anything that's funny. I do like to read personal stuff. That's really interesting to me. Oh man, Rosalie Lightning. I loved Rosalie Lightning.
What is that?
That's the Tom Hart's autobiographical book about losing his daughter.
Oh yes, I did hear about this.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful, fantastic, heart-wrenching book, and one of the best things I've read in a long time. So anything like that, like memoir stuff, I think is fantastic. I really like to read it. I just don't know how much of it I really want to do myself.
Mm-hmm.
I read a really great mini by Sam Sharp recently, and I'm trying to remember what it's called. That was fantastic, and also sort of, I think, autobiographical, if not semi-biographical. So that was great. And Jesse Recklaw's memoir of it's called, I never know how to say it. It's LOVF. Love. Yeah. About his time struggling with some mental illness issues and stuff like that. That was pretty intense, and just like a kind of a journal comic that just unlike anything I've ever read. It's incredible.
I see. So, what would you say has been the most rewarding thing you've worked on, either in comics or something else?
Oh, well, I think Just So You Know is probably the most rewarding thing that I've done. It's not financially, I mean, or anything like that, no. But it's I've probably gotten the most like personal, positive feedback on that comic more than anything else I've ever done. Like people who were questioning their own gender identity, or who needed something to read or to give to someone that they knew to help them understand their transition, or that of someone they know or love. That was pretty amazing. People, I gave it to my physician at the time, because her son was her young son was gender questioning, and she, it helped her a lot to read an adult talking about these issues in a positive way. And yeah, that's definitely by far been the most rewarding thing I've done. I feel like it's reached the most people. I mean, I like doing funny comics. They're great. They're funny. But they don't have the same sort of resonance. But I'm okay with that. I mean, I like doing funny stuff. I like making jokes and drawing silly pictures.
Yeah, well, the thing about comedy is that, because it makes this kind of feel good and it's funny, it becomes kind of devalued. I mean, we think of it as being easy to do, but it's actually harder probably than just doing a straight drama. Yeah,
it's true. No, comedy is hard. I spend a lot of time thinking about how to craft a tweet. I'll spend half a day thinking about trying to make a funny tweet and how to build it up just right, and then I'll finally sit down and do it just right and exactly the way I want to, and then I'll submit it, and then I'll 10 minutes later notice I had a typo in it, and it's like, shit, sorry. So it's hard, but it's fun. I mean, comedy, I'm always drawn towards comedy. I don't think I could really do a comic that was too serious, that didn't have some comedic aspect to it. I don't think I would find it very interesting to do.
Yeah. Okay, so what's coming next from you, comics-wise?
Well, nothing too big down the pike. Honestly, I'm just, I've been doing the GoComics for about 3 weeks now, so I'm just trying to stay on track with that and not not fall behind schedule before I establish myself as a somewhat reliable creator. I want them to not regret their decision to sign me on, and still doing the nib stuff, but yeah, no, I don't have anything too big coming up. Every once in a while I kick around the idea of collecting some strips into a book or something, but I'd much prefer somebody come to me and say, we want to put all your stuff in a book. And I'd say, that's great. Here's a here's a CD-ROM with all of my files. Please send me a check in 4 to 6 weeks.
Well, maybe when the kids grow up a little bit, you'll have more time to do one of those graphic novels.
Yeah, that would be cool. I know once they're in school and doing their own thing. Once we ship them off to boarding school when they're 5.
Okay,
5 years old.
So they're preschoolers.
Yeah. One's 4 and one's 2. So they're pretty.
Okay, yeah, that's a handful.
They require a lot of attention still.
I see. Okay, well, yeah, thanks so much for your time today. This is great. It's
Yeah.
good to finally meet you, even if it's only on Skype.
Yeah, thanks. No, it's been really fun chatting with you.
Joey Sayers is at jsayers.com. You can write us at mail@deconstructingcomics.com or look up Deconstructing Comics on Patreon, Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, and YouTube. All our social media links can be found on the right sidebar at deconstructingcomics.com. Also, please give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. Our theme is from bensound.com. Last Thursday on To the Bat Polls, Paul and I took a look at the big new book of photos and info on the making of Batman 66. Is Batman a celebration of the classic TV series, suitable for your Bat coffee table? Look up To the Bat Polls wherever you find your podcast, or at tothebatpolls.libsyn.com. If you're looking for some constructive feedback on your comic, send it to us and Mulele and I will critique it on our spin-off podcast, Critiquing Comics. Send it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com, and please try to keep it to about 30 pages. Another critique coming up this Thursday, right here in this podcast feed. Then next Monday, Kumar and Dana discuss Daniel Clow's latest graphic novel, Patience. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.